Hello and welcome everybody to episode 2 of our webinar series, Bridging the Gap, Indigenous-Led Clean Transportation for Saskatchewan's North. My name is Mitch Carlson and I'll once again be your host and moderator for today's session. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that many of us are joining from the ancestral lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Nakota, Dakota Lakota, and Dene people, as well as the homeland of the Métis in Saskatchewan. In our first episode in January, we introduced our campaign and we had a chance to speak with Cheyenne Hunt of English River First Nation, Jason Cook-Studer of Lac La Ronge Indian Band, and Jonathan Palmer of Aurora Renewables. If you missed this first episode or would like to rewatch, you can find the recording on Aurora's YouTube channel, and a link to that can be found on Aurora's website, where you registered for this webinar. For today's webinar, I am very excited to be joined by an all-star cast in Canada's EV sector. With me today are Louise Levesque, Senior Policy Director with Electric Mobility Canada, Nino, Cara, Founder and President of Electric Autonomy, Cara Clairman, President and CEO of Plug and Drive, and Tim Burrows with the Electric Vehicle Society and host of Canada Talks Electric Cars. A warm Saskatchewan welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for joining. Now, our audience may not be familiar with your organization, so I'd like to give you each a couple of minutes just to tell us a bit about yourself and your role within your organization. And Louise, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Mitch. So wonderful to be here with everybody. Electric Mobility Canada, or EMC for short, is a national industry association representing over 180 businesses and organizations across Canada and across the electric vehicle ecosystem. Our mission is to enable and accelerate the transition to sustainable electric mobility in Canada through advocacy, collaboration, education, and thought leadership, with the end goal of creating a cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous future for all Canadians. As Senior Policy Director, I bring EMC members and other stakeholders together to discuss barriers and identify solutions to support transportation electrification. So the discussions that we're going to be having today are the kind of discussions that I often have with different members across the country. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Louise. Nino, we'll go to you now.
Oh, I think it must know it's Cara.
Oh, Cara, yeah, sorry, I've got it in the wrong order. Thanks for that. Cara,
yes,
I'll jump
that
to you.
looks like me. Thank you so much for inviting Plug and Drive, Mitch. And for those of you who I haven't met, Cara Clairman, President and CEO of Plug and Drive. And Plug and Drive is a nonprofit all about educating consumers on the benefits of electric vehicles and helping them to make the switch. And we mostly do that through butts and seats. We take our show on the road all across Canada, offering test drives and educating consumers on charging and everything there is that you need to know in order to make the switch to electric. We have, in this past year, done a national tour where we've gone all across the country, including Saskatchewan, and look forward to being back there again this year when we do a repeat of our tour. So I hope we'll be somewhere near you, and we can talk more about how you can get a test drive in Saskatchewan. Thanks.
Great. Okay, thanks very much, Cara. All right, Nino, your turn. Sorry for jumping the gun. We've got you on mute there. Just
Thanks very much, Mitch, for having me on today, and it's great to be on the panel with these other speakers. I've got a lot from all of these organisations, Plug and Drive, EMC, and the EV Society, to learn about EVs. So I'm the founder of Electric Autonomy Canada. We're a media and events company reporting on the EV transition across Canada. There's a lot involved in the EV transition, and our mission is to really showcase leadership and share best practices that's happening across the country. So wherever you are, you can learn about what's happening in Victoria and Halifax and Saskatchewan, and these some of the best work that's been done can actually help inform and educate others. So this isn't just in terms of government policy and municipal regulations, but also in terms of what people are doing as far as fleet adoption is concerned. So we report across the whole EV ecosystem. And as well as providing news and knowledge sharing, we also organize events. And our flagship event is coming up. It's in Toronto. It's on April the 8th and 9th. But it features around 2,000 people, around 100 exhibitors. And Cara and her team are organizing test drives, which is awesome. And it's a great place for the whole EV ecosystem to come together, meet each other, learn about the technology, share learnings, the good stuff as well as the challenges. And it's a great place to come and meet in person. So I'll leave it for there for now. But thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks, Nino. And Tim, I'll just jump over to you now to learn a little bit about EVS.
Well, thank you very much, Mitch. And again, like the others, I appreciate being here. I'm privileged to be with this esteemed group. I know these folks and all the good work that they do. It's great to be part of this today. And I, as you mentioned, on the board of directors for Electric Vehicle Society. I have been with EV Society for, I think, like 12 years now. And I also began a number of years ago producing a monthly webinar called Canada Talks Electric Cars. And we look for people who are experts in certain fields, really any fields really related to electric mobility, particularly automobiles and personal transport, but not necessarily limited to that. EV Society itself has reach across Canada. We have over 3,000 people. We basically are the boots on the ground for this group of folks, and we connect over 3,000 people across the country. Often they are running in their own local chapters or groups, EV groups. As we do here, where I am in Ontario, with many chapters, each working and arranging events and keeping interest and conversation going around electric mobility and EVs. So that's where I'll leave it.
Great. Okay, thanks so much. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen. I want to have a discussion before we move on into another slide here. But so some of the key takeaways from our first episode were the impacts of climate change on Northern Saskatchewan community, the importance of transportation to remote northern communities for daily activities and essential services, then also the challenges of long travel distances, reliability concerns, lack of charging infrastructure, lack of access to vehicle inventory, and a lack of policy support from the provincial level. So I wanted to ask each of you to maybe jump in a bit to see what services and or resources do your organizations provide or that you're aware of that would be valuable for remote communities in helping to determine whether EVs are a reliable solution, keeping in mind that many of these communities have very limited exposure to EV technology at this time. So who wants to jump in first on that one?
I think maybe I can start, Mitch, and for sure, Cara's going to have a lot to say there. But I think at this stage, what's really, really important is getting more information out to people that are curious about EVs and creating more curiosity for those who are not yet curious. So the early stages of adoption in any community is where we need more information, access to vehicles to do test drives and get familiar with it, and also the possibility to talk to current EV drivers about the real life. Like, you can have ideas about charging infrastructure, but if you're not driving an EV, you don't really have the real life picture about it. So so we need more educational information, through sites like Nina's work and EV Society, and of course, Plug and Drive. So that's the first step that needs to get the information out there, answers to questions that people might have.
Cara, she primed you up here for this one.
She did. So yes, I mean, I completely agree with Louise, and we are bringing the information to the extent that we can to Saskatchewan, and actually Saskatchewan also has a very active chapter of EV Society, where I'm sure Tim will talk about, but they have a group of EV owners that are very enthusiastic, and they would be happy to share what they know about driving EVs. We are able to bring our test drive to some smaller and more remote communities. So anybody who, really would love for us to come just needs to get in touch with us and we can see if we can make it there. And what I would just say, Mitch, you sort of posed the question about long travel distances and access to vehicles. Just, to sort of keep an open mind in the sense that, I mean, now the vehicles have quite a long range. So for many drivers, those are feasible for them now. And then don't forget about that plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
It can really make it possible for anyone to get into an EV. So that's an option. And then of course access to vehicles is more challenging, but the used market is really developing and so and really affordable. So I would say also don't forget about used. So that's enough from me. Let's hear from some others.
Thanks.
I'll add that we publish a weekly, bi-weekly newsletter that is free to subscribe to and includes news about EV deployments and developments across the country. We do a significant amount of reporting on Indigenous community adoption of electric vehicles, and so it's always obviously inspiring to hear peer-to-peer case studies. We also have a knowledge platform called EV Fleets Pro, and I'll put a link into the chat when I stop talking because I can't do both. But it does for anyone who's has a number of vehicles that they're operating. It is like a 30 module course that will guide you through the steps in a very accessible way of what needs to be considered if you're electrifying a fleet of vehicles. The other thing that I'd say is that we have the EV and Charging Expo taking place in Toronto on April 8th and 9th. It's a long way to travel, but we have done some partner deals, for example, with some Indigenous communities in Manitoba, and would be really happy to do the same with Saskatchewan. So if there's anybody on this webinar who thinks they can make it to Toronto, please message me or via Mitch. We'll cover the cost of your ticket to get into the expo, so that will you'll still have to deal with your travel costs, which is not insignificant, but hopefully that lowers the bar for you just to kind of get in the room and kind of experience it. And I think you'll meet everybody else on the screen here. Hopefully, Louise, Cara, and Tim will be there. Mitch, you're very welcome to join us as well as our guest.
Well, that's excellent. No, thanks so much. And I do know a few people that have expressed interest in that event already, so I'll make sure I share that with them and share that offer. So thanks so much. Tim, we'll go to you.
Yeah, just as continuing with the theme of being boots on the ground, SEVA, or the Saskatchewan Electric Vehicle Association, is a resource that could be reached in the province. Again, the strength of talking to actual owners is invaluable, not just to get that firsthand experience. If you can't get to Cara and her folks to get a few minutes, talk to somebody who's owned an electric vehicle for a period of time, knocking down the myths and the misconceptions and the bad information that floats around there is almost a full-time job. And I think everybody probably on this screen is familiar with that. But talking to somebody who lives and breathes it, who owns it, is probably the best advice I could ever suggest. So. Yeah. Leave it there.
Great, thanks, Tim. Yeah, I know we've got some of the SEVA board members on right now. We've got Matt Pointer and Geraldine Nixon are in here. And also a good reminder from the audience that there is another organization, SaskEV, that's kind of Saskatoon based, that does similar work kind of out of the Saskatoon hub. Great, thanks all for that. I'm going to go slightly off script here for a little bit. And I assume we're all EV drivers here. Is that correct? I want to just in a minute or so, just tell me about your decision to go to an EV and what model you're currently driving or what models you've owned. Tim, we'll start with you since you're on screen.
Sure. So I started driving EV in 2013. I bought a Tesla P85 sedan, and back before they had things like sensors on the car and how things have changed since those days. What got me onto it, I guess I was always a little bit interested in technology. I was in the beverage alcohol industry in my career. Some say I sobered up and bought an electric car, but I was always interested in tech and just you know what, it was the concept, the idea of driving on electricity, knowing what it would guessing, I guess, at that time, what it would be like to be able to just, plug in at home and wake up in the morning and have a full tank. It excited me, and I figured, well, electric motors are smooth and quiet and powerful. Lo and behold, it all delivered. All of that sort of imagination came reality, and I never looked back. And I continue to drive EV all this time. My wife has joined me in that world, and I'm still driving a Tesla. At this point, it's a Model X. So the S, as I got older, was getting closer to the ground. It was harder to get in and out of all the time. The SUV version is much more comfortable. So I'm happy with that format.
Thanks. Nino, we'll go to you. We'll work backwards here.
I've always hated the smell that I love cars, but I've always hated the smell and the pollution. I hate breathing it in and I hate the noise, and I have since I was a child. And so as soon as I became aware that electric vehicles were a possibility, I really want it to happen. And I want it to happen in my neighborhood, dropping my kid off at school and seeing all the SUVs. You can't smoke in front of the school, but you can run your SUVs like crazy, and it just drives me mad. And so I kind of wanted to get into an electric car. Also, a bit like Tim from the technology point of view, I hate the idea of in a gas car, you put your foot on the brake and all that energy just goes to heat. It's just such a terrible waste. And I do care about climate, and and I'm very invested in it. But these are more sort of close at home things that kind of get me motivated. And so, having electric cars is just a lovely experience. Preheating the cabin in the winters, and for me, it just never gets old. Putting it in gear and like nothing happens. It's just silent. You put it in gear and you put your foot on the gas, and it just starts rolling without any noise or drama. And I love that every time I get into the car.
Cara?
Yes, I am an early adopter like Tim. I got my first EV in 2011, and it was a Nissan Leaf hatchback. It was that bright robin's egg blue Leaf. I think I had one of the first, if not the first. And actually, an amazing little car. It had very low range, but it was a great car. And then when a longer range vehicle came around, I bought the Chevy Bolt in 2017. And what an improvement, because then it went to 400 kilometers range. And actually, I still have that car, the 2017 Bolt, and my kids drive it, and it's a fantastic. So my kids actually learned on electric. My kids have never driven a gas car, and now the eldest is 28, and so I turned them into believers just from osmosis. And now I drive an Ioniq 5, which is an amazing four-wheel drive. Now the bells and whistles are unbelievable compared to my first one, the first Leaf. But that Ioniq 5, for the price that it is just got everything going for it. Highly recommend.
Yeah, that's great. I just actually posted on my LinkedIn about the new Leaf that's come out and compared it to just like how far it's come in such a
Oh, I
short amount
know.
of time,
I
right? Like,
saw that. Actually, I haven't had a chance to drive that one, but that's
yeah.
coming up soon.
It went from, what was your first one, 150 maybe kilometer range, and now it's
on the
488
best possible
on the best
day.
days. Yeah.
Lots of days it was more like 80.
Right. And now they're rated for 480 something, I think.
Amazing.
And the price is lower than it was back then, I think. So yeah, it's great. Louise, what are you driving these days?
Oh goodness. I first bought I bought a PHEV Chevrolet Volt in 2014. That was after a period where I was working for an environmental organization, and we were promoting eco driving techniques, and I was applying the eco driving techniques, and then I hit a wall where I could not improve anymore, and it drove me crazy. And then I started looking into the Chevrolet Volt. At the time, and this will resonate with some of the listeners here, at the time, a 100% electric was not an option for me because of the driving needs that I had. I would regularly have 4-hour drives to go, and there was just no fast charging. It did not exist. So the Chevrolet Volt was wonderful for that. I loved that car, and that's where I just fell in love with driving electric. And we are a 2-car household, so at some point, my partner also had a Chevrolet Volt, and it was kind of ridiculous to have 2 PHEVs, plug-in hybrids. So I bought a used Chevrolet Spark EV at 2014, and I still have it and still drive it. I love that little bug. And then after that, we replaced the Volt with the Bolt, and then we replaced the Bolt with the Tesla. And now currently, and I still have the Spark again. And then the Tesla was recently replaced. Tim, you were saying it's hard the Tesla Model 3 was getting low for me. So we changed for a used Chevrolet Blazer EV, which is wonderful, a little big for me, but still wonderful, wonderful EV. So I've been driving 100% electric for 10 years now.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. That's very cool stories. We're going to engage the audience here. So I'm going to have Raven here, who's in the background, post a poll question. As we get into our next section, I know Tim's got some information on the new, some of the new policies that have come out. And as we're looking into that, we're interested in what the audience thinks about, like, what information are you more, I guess, specific information would you like to hear about? And that will help us to, I guess, guide this discussion as well as some of our future webinars. So while that's posted, we will jump into our next section. And Tim, I'm just going to pop up that slide for you, and then we'll talk about what's new and exciting from a kind of policy and governance perspective here.
Yeah, so fancy infographic, but I'll just quickly flip through kind of the highlights. So Canada's 2026 auto strategy sets EV adoption targets. They've changed the targets. They're now 75% by 2035 and 90% by 2040. The feds are backing that with $3 billion with a B in strategic investment. So EV manufacturing and clean tech. Consumer purchase incentive, which had gone away for a while, sorely missed, has been reinstated under the program. And it's this year, it's buyers can receive up to $5,000 for a BEV for a full battery electric vehicle, and half that, $2,500 if it's a plug-in electric vehicle. The incentive only applies to vehicles that have a final, I guess, negotiated price of $50,000 or less, which does limit it somewhat. Unless the vehicle is made in Canada, I think that's the other aspect of that. And then those rebates, they do decline gradually over 5 years, which I guess is aimed at encouraging earlier adoption. They want people to move more quickly at the beginning. Finally, I guess the 2030 maximum incentive drops to $2,000 for full EVs and $1,000 for plug-ins, and it kind of goes down each year after that. I guess, and for Saskatchewan residents, this does help lower some of the upfront costs, but unfortunately, the larger pickup trucks probably won't qualify as it's written today, which I realize would be missed. And for remote and Indigenous communities, funding can support community-owned charging sites. It enables electrification of local fleets and band vehicles, community transport, municipal fleets, and the like. I guess it also reduces fuel delivery dependency for areas that are reliant on diesel.
Great.
So I don't know if I've missed anything.
Yeah, Mitch, I'd like to just add maybe a few comments here. One thing that would be interesting for Saskatchewan to do is to add a small incentive. It doesn't have to be, the same as the federals, but if they want to attract more of that program into the province, the province can initiate an additional, because they can stack a rebate on vehicles to stack it with the federal one. So just a little suggestion there if you want to push your provincial government to add, 1,000, 2,000, and make it predictable. This is something that EMC had been advocating for. Like you have a start date, an end date, and then going down slowly through the years. Everybody knows what to expect. And then another thing for charging infrastructure, it's important to know that there are currently two programs at the federal level. One is with the Canada Infrastructure Bank, but the other one is ZEV, the Zero-Emission Vehicles Infrastructure Program. Sorry, we just call it ZEV all the time. But and that one is slated to end in March 2027. So it's important to advocate to the federal government that this program is really important for more rural and remote areas for which the CIB program is not well tailored to. It's more for larger business case situations. So we will be advocating for the renewal of the ZEV program to ensure that rural and remote communities still have access to funding opportunities.
Great, thank you. Cara and Nino, what are your thoughts on these, I guess, new or the changes to these policies? And I almost want to look at the targets and take an over under and think of like, I know those have changed and been pushed back, but my perspective is that 75% by 2035 is easily achievable, and we'll probably blow past that. But I'm just curious, thoughts in general on the updated strategy from Canada.
Sure, I can start. Well, look, the longer term target, we were sort of along with EMC and others. Let's sort of keep it in perspective. We still want a big goal, and if it shifted by a few years, we were like, okay, lose the battle, win the war, kind of thing. So I'm okay with these. That doesn't make that much difference, in the big picture. The loss of the mandate, or that is significant because it did, ensure that vehicle supply, was in all the provinces. And one thing you mentioned at the start, Mitch, was that getting vehicles is a challenge, and so we have to really challenge the automakers to make sure they bring the vehicles to all the provinces, because their claim was, it's not needed because, we're going to do it anyway. And so I hope they really will. So they need to hear the voices that say, we want these. In terms of the escalation, or the downward escalation of the rebate, we also thought this was a good idea, partly because as Louise mentioned, it's predictable, but also because it does send a signal to consumers. These rebates aren't forever, and they won't be needed forever. In fact, like we're heading towards price parity. And at some point, there wouldn't be a reason to have rebates. And, the industry doesn't expect rebates forever. And so I think it's a good plan from that point of view. I would also like Louise to see, like Louise, I would like to see ZVIP refunded, because CIB is different. I think that was lost on some people when the announcements were made. And so for those on this call who, let's say, live in rural remote, you can still find EV infrastructure providers and get like 75% of it covered under ZVIP, and you should move on it because it may not continue after next year. So, so that's important reminder.
Fully in agreement with the other speakers. One thing that I'm hoping that we'll see over the next few years, and I think we will, is increasingly more value orientated model vehicles. One of the reasons why the adoption didn't take off as we might have hoped over the last 2 or 3 years in particular is because the automakers skewed very heavily towards premium vehicles, larger vehicles, fully loaded vehicles, to maximize the sale price of electric vehicles. And what we've been missing is that kind of Honda Civic alternative that is an entry-level vehicle, and at that mass sort of level. But as Cara said, we are getting closer to price parity, and companies like Ford are developing a whole new EV platform with a new production line so that they can bring these models to market at a much lower price point. And I think what they've realized is they can't use their same production tricks to kind of get to this level as Ford are doing. They're rethinking it altogether. And I think, and one thing I do want the audience to be aware of is that this is happening across the auto industry. So when you read the mainstream media, sometimes you might feel as though the EV transition is not happening, or that it's in danger or something like that. But all of the automakers are absolutely committed to it. They are just adjusting their plans. The other thing that I would say specifically, in answer to your question, Mitch, about these policies is why I think it's very significant is it's with these announcements in the last month from the federal government to allow Chinese vehicles in with just a 6% tariff instead of a 100% tariff. And also with the announcement of these rebates is it's a significant shift from US auto policy, which we've been tied to for years. And I think we in the industry were very curious to see what the Carney government was going to do, whether we were going to be beholden to the US because it's a very difficult time for our economy overall, or whether we were actually going to go our own way and align perhaps more with Europe and even what's happening in Asia. And what's clear is that the federal government sees a fully electrified vision and is putting in, I think, a lot of support to make it happen. So the EV adoption in Canada, the curve of EV adoption in Canada, I'm sure we are going to start seeing an increase in that.
Great, thanks everybody. Yeah, I find the most interesting part is the EV rebate part, and maybe the most challenging for Saskatchewan, as Tim said, is we've, especially for remote communities, is like I understand they're targeting lower price and getting wanting to put the market, get lower priced vehicles out there. But one of the comments that Cheyenne had made last time is that she always pictures an EV as that small little sedan, or and it just doesn't, that's not the use case for their communities. Is they've got larger vans or pickup trucks mostly to make sure that they are moving around a lot of the not a lot of paved roads where they're at. And so there's just a different context. And I'm wondering, Louise, you had mentioned provincial incentives, and I know in the last year BC had dropped some of their provincial incentives. Are those coming back? Does anyone know whether provincial incentives in other provinces are either still remain or are coming back now that this announcement has been made?
Yeah, I don't have clear indications for BC. I know that Quebec's incentives are on a declining, it's a planned decline. To my knowledge, Cara, you might have the best information on that, but I think they're ending at the end of this year, so it'll be just the federal rebate there. It's really great in that sense that the federal rebate has been reinstated with this new program because many of the provinces are either moving out or not coming back after a pause in their programs.
Yeah, that's true. Although there are still provinces with rebates, we have a page on our website that has like what's still active and what isn't. But somebody asked in the Q&A about how would we convince the government, that there's value there. And I think the argument that doesn't get made a lot is around the fact that if you're plugging in your car in Saskatchewan, you're plugging into Saskatchewan-made electricity, and that actually funds jobs, local infrastructure in Saskatchewan. Whereas if you buy oil and gas, for the most part, that money leaves. Now, some of it might go to Alberta, but some of it also might go to Venezuela or elsewhere. And so it's actually a case for local. And, you don't have to necessarily make the environmental case, which is very strong, or even the economic case for yourself individually, which is, of course, those of us who we're all drivers on this panel. we all save a lot of money. And most of us look at each other and say, I can't believe everybody's not doing this. I mean, it costs me, if it costs you $1.50 a liter, it costs me about 25 cents. I mean, you feel like you're getting away with something. It's so cheap. And you know, those commercials that say, "Yeah, get the car." I feel like that, you know, because it's so affordable. And so I feel like some of these economic arguments need to be made. The province is sort of stuck to the very sort of traditional argument about EVs are for rich people. Well, not anymore, they're not. And so I hope that we could change that tune, you know, to say, hey, we're buying local here.
If I could too, take the conversation just slightly sideways, but staying on the issue of affordability. One thing that's overlooked is that I believe it's around a third of all Canadians buy in the used car market. And EVs have been around, first of all, been around long enough now that we have an inventory of excellent used electric vehicles for people who, you know, are concerned about affordability. The other thing I'll say about those cars in that inventory is that they are, in my humble opinion, terribly undervalued because they're not known, because they're in a field where the technology is advancing so quickly that last year's model doesn't attract a certain segment of the market. They want the newest, latest, greatest. And so as a result, you can get a super bargain on a used EV, and it's not something to be overlooked.
Great. Okay, thanks everybody. I would love to continue talking on this topic, but I want to engage the audience again here. So I'll have Raven just pop up that the results of our poll. Then we also want to get to some questions or comments from the audience. So just taking a look here. So vehicle availability and specifications. Looks like we're getting quite a few there. But the charging infrastructure, not surprisingly, is something that people want to hear a lot about. So I know there's been some people putting in, Ken has posted here in the chat of a promotion that they have for a level 2 charger. And like you said, the ZEV is still available. And Shane Peltier is with EcoWest. He has mentioned that there is funding specifically for Saskatchewan still available. So, you know, if you're looking for chargers in your communities, I think now is a really good time. And like Cara, I think it was you that mentioned, is like really want to get on that because it may not last forever. And now is the time to look into that. But yeah, we're going to open this up now to the audience. So please post your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them if we can. We've got just about, you know, another 7 minutes here only before we want to wrap this up. But if there's anything that people are looking for, please jump into it.
I see the question in the chat there, in the Q&A, about the increase in funding being released by the federal government for EV charging infrastructure. It's important to know that there wasn't much of an increase, in the sense that was already announced in the budget. So sometimes in these big announcements, there's a bit of a recycling of news. So it was a bit of a recycled news there. It's really important funds, though, very, very much. But what is being said here, the question is exactly what I was pointing to earlier, is that we will be advocating for maintaining, recapitalizing the ZEV fund, because the ZEV fund was the place where we could ensure that underserved areas and more rural and remote, the areas where the charging business case isn't strong enough for private investment to come in and build it out. The frequency of use is not there yet and will likely take some time. So right now, the CIB program is well tailored for larger organizations and networks, and they will be aiming for the cities and the areas where there's already higher levels of adoption. So we need to ensure that there's a messaging in there that the ZEV program, which was very efficient at doing what it did, is still needed to ensure that these areas will be covered or will have access to the funds that they need to be covered.
Thanks. And I know, like, our engagement with some of the Indigenous communities in northern Saskatchewan, there are other streams that we're looking into through, like, the Green Municipality Fund, to help do feasibility studies and then capital projects for EV transition. So, some of this is not directly from the federal government in that sense, but Federation of Canadian Municipalities has, and there might be some other streams here too. So
I'm pretty
those
sure
are that I'm aware of.
Indigenous Clean Energy has
Right.
some ZEV funding still, and they are specifically focusing on Indigenous communities, so that's a good place to look.
Yeah, excellent.
Cara, did you say you have a list on your website, or
I have a
kind of
list of the incentives.
of the incentive? Okay.
Yeah, and the different provinces and links to the different available incentives.
Okay, great. Bob Race has a question that I'm not sure if I have an answer to, but how long does it take for the utility per province to provide appropriate power to a charging site?
I can
Very good question.
I can comment on it, and I'm sure
Okay.
the other panelists will as well. I think it depends on where the site is and how much power is currently available at that site, and the number and speed of the chargers that need to be installed. If there is already power at the site, it can take kind of a few months. If there isn't power at the site, it can take a couple of years, because there may need to be upgrades throughout the transmission to that location. It is, my understanding, very much a case-by-case basis. Cara's ex-utility, so she'll be able to provide a lot more detail on this. But one of the words of advice I constantly hear is speak to your utility first before you do any planning, and they'll tell you how realistic it is to get the power you need to the site.
It's a message that we also often have at EMC also, is that as soon as you start thinking about or planning, you have identified a site, the first thing you should do is call the utility and, complete the assessment of the site with the utility even before you start planning anything, because it could be either months or years.
And it's not just one-off fast charging stations that you were talking about. It applies to things like multi-unit residential buildings. Any place where you're going to have a larger draw on energy than is typical for the area and the situation.
And sometimes in those areas, you can look at the option of having back, more and more, we're seeing this in northern rural areas, battery backups. To help shave the peak. And then, it's more expensive, of course, but there are some solutions, but that needs to be known early in the process, so you don't have to go back to the drawing table once you're 75% planned. You have to know where the power is and what type of installations are needed to get to the charging levels that you need.
Right. Yeah, I see one of the audience members here is Kevin Mack, who was with Parkland and on the run chargers, and I know they used a lot of those, battery backup at a lot of their sites. So I feel like Kevin would have some good insights into how they built out that network across BC and other parts of Canada. So I'm encouraged by our panelist answers, but I also see in our audience there's some pretty well-versed people in the audience here too. Yeah. We could have a whole nother session with those folks here as well. We are pretty much running out of time here, which is unfortunate because I would love to keep this going. But we should wrap things up here. We're coming to the end of our time. Thank you all once again, panelists, for joining us today. This was just an excellent discussion, and I appreciate it, and looking forward to chatting with you more. And one last poll here before we close is just, we want to know how you heard about today's webinar so we can help to target our future episodes here. Speaking of which, our next episode we have booked for Wednesday, March 25th. This is going to be an EV 101 session, an introduction to electric vehicles, and it's going to be with Kenneth Bakor, creator, producer, and host of a YouTube channel called the EV Revolution Show, whose objective is to provide education and awareness of the EV marketplace to all consumers. If you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, you should. It is excellent if you want to take virtual test drives along with Kenneth. He is probably, I feel like he's driven more different types of EVs than anyone in the country. So check it out. They're about 30 minutes long each, but he does an excellent job of those. But for that episode next in March here, you can expect to learn what electric vehicles are all about, why they are now mainstream with wide adoption worldwide. So be sure to tune in and bring any of your EV related questions for Kenneth with that. You can pre-register today. There will be a link on our website available for that already. And I think that's pretty much the end of our time. So thank you all again, panelists, for joining us, and the audience for your engagement in today's session, and looking forward to see you at our next episode next month. Thanks so much.